everyone, and welcome to today's episode. We're going to be talking about The Light of Stars by Jenelle Hovde. So this one, it's a Regency romance. It fits within the Christian fiction category, and it's also a standalone story. So why did I want to read this one? Well, I loved reading Janelle's book, No Stone Unturned, and I have recorded episode 22 on the book, and I've also got an author chat with Jenelle where we talked about No Stone Unturned. And so you can look up those episodes at the playlist at your favorite podcasting app or at YouTube. And I'm going to add my usual disclaimer and say many thanks to the author who provided an advance reader copy, and all the opinions that I express in this episode are completely my own. So I'm very excited. I have a giveaway, one paperback copy for a reader with a USA mailing address, and there'll be more information on how to enter the giveaway at the end of the episode. So let's talk about the book. The Light of Stars by Jenelle Hovde is set in Regency, England, and also in India, which is an interesting combination. We get to see the British Empire in this book. So we have a number of romance tropes. So being a Regency, we have the ton and the London season and all the things that go with a Regency in the book. We have an arranged marriage. So our paternal grandfathers have a business arrangement where they marry off their grandchildren, which is a very important part of the story. We also have forced proximity as a result of the whole arranged marriage thing. We have family drama, lots of family drama. We have a number of mysteries in the story that are intriguing and very interesting. We have danger, we have political intrigue, and we also have the East India Company in India. And so the East India Company was the British arm, basically, of their trade. So all the trade that was, because India was part of the British Empire, so all the trade was controlled by the East India Company, and that also plays a role in the story. So I'm going to share the first line. Now, this is from the prologue. So we're in 1803, and we're in Hyderabad in India when this prologue happens. And where our main character, Kitty, is only 6 years old in this particular scene. The night smelled of jasmine and smoke. So what's happening is that Kitty and her older brother, they're in the palace courtyard. So their mother is an Indian princess, their father is an Englishman, and the British soldiers invade the palace, and her brother and Kitty get taken away by the soldiers, and they end up being kidnapped, rescued. Whether what actually happens is a big question for a large part of the story. And they end up going to England with their grandfather and living on his estate there. And so what happened in this prologue is very important for the story and creates a lot of questions. So in chapter 1, we move to England. So it's 1814. So Kitty's now 17 years old. And as I said, she's pretty much trapped on her grandfather's estate, and she's feeling trapped for a whole bunch of reasons. And she fights with her grandfather, and he won't let her indulge her love for astronomy and other things. So there's a whole lot of stuff going along with that. And so Kitty's background is her father had passed away just before she and her brother were taken from the palace in India. Her mother is a Muslim princess, so her father converted when he married their mother. And so the East India Company is where her father was working in India. And he was also high up in terms of the diplomatic system and the society in terms of what was going on in India as well. So Kitty has a very controlling and ruthless paternal grandfather who she does not get along with, who's basically said, you are going to marry this man who was raised in India, who's the son of my friend, business colleague, etc., etc. So as you can imagine, she's not particularly happy that she's going to be forced to marry the grandson of an English earl who was raised in India, because it's such a strategic business arrangement for her grandfather. So this introduces us to Sebastian. So he's a bit older than Kitty, probably early 20s. He works for his grandfather. Now, his grandfather is the chairman of the board of the East India Company, and he's also a British earl. So he's part of the aristocracy and very wealthy. And so at the start of the story, Sebastian was never meant to be the heir for his grandfather's fortune. He was the black sheep, so he was very self-indulgent. He was the middle grandson and thought that his life would be very different to where he's landed now. And so he got himself into a bit of trouble, ended up coming to faith. He had some mentors that helped him along the way. And so he's now a changed man looking to please his grandfather and prove that he's no longer the black sheep that caused everyone a whole lot of grief. And so, what's happened is Sebastian's father has passed away, his older brother has passed away, which makes him the heir. And he also has a younger brother who he doesn't get on particularly well with. And doesn't, his younger brother, there's a few question marks about his integrity. So, Sebastian's living in Calcutta and is very involved in terms of what's happening with the East India Company. And he's living within his father's household, his grandfather's household, I should say, and very much feeling controlled by his grandfather, particularly when he can't choose his wife and is forced to marry this lady in England. So, what that means is that he's got to travel to England, which is a 6-month journey. It's not a fast journey by sea because the Suez Canal didn't exist at this time. So, to travel from India to England, you've got to go all the way around Africa into the southern part of Africa and around the Cape. So, it's a very long, arduous journey to get from India to England. And so to basically, he's told by his grandfather that unless you go to England, unless you marry this girl, you are going to be disinherited and your brother will be my heir. So really, Sebastian, if he wants to please his grandfather and wants to maintain his position and role within the East India Company, he has no choice but to go to England and to woo and marry this girl. So the meet cute is actually really sweet in the story when they first meet. It's very awkward and cute, and that's because they're strangers and don't actually know who they are. So their official meet cute is a disaster, and Kitty is very hostile, and she's determined that she's not going to marry Sebastian at all. Like, how dare her grandfather limit her and do this, etc., etc. So it starts off their relationship is very volatile, and she's hostile, and she doesn't want a bar of him and just doesn't want to know about the whole arranged marriage thing. So we have a lot of problems because this arranged marriage is not going to run smoothly, and Sebastian will have to do a lot of work to prove to Kitty that he would be a worthy husband. And Kitty has her own secrets and she's still trying to work out what happened to her mother. So when she was snatched from the palace with her brother, their mother was alive, but then she's heard that her mother's no longer alive, so she doesn't quite know what's going on. And she hasn't had any correspondence from her family in India, which she blames her grandfather for in terms of interfering with mail and not letting mail go to India. So there's a whole big mystery relating to her background. And as a result of what happened in India, she's got a lot of childhood trauma, has abandonment issues, and her grandfather is harsh and controlling and ruthless. And she doesn't feel like she was nurtured or loved by him. So she's had a very hard childhood. She has an aunt that's her father's sister who lives with them, who's been some comfort. But overall, she's had a very difficult time and she really misses her wonderful memories with her parents from when they were at the palace in India. So Kitty, with her English father and her Indian princess mother, she just doesn't fit into English society, and nor does her brother. And so they both have a lot of issues that they have to overcome because of their skin color, because of their background, and she doesn't know where she fits. So her identity is a big question that she's dealing with in the story. So where does she belong and where is her home are questions that Kitty will have to ponder and work out during the story. So, as I said, her domineering grandfather, she fights with him. She's outspoken. She's not ladylike. She's interested in the blue stocking movement in England as well, and basically annoys her grandfather greatly because she's not a nice, compliant, ladylike person. And Sebastian has his own emotional baggage related to his family. and decisions that he's made in the past as well. And the political situation in India with the British Empire is very complicated. The French had been involved not long before this as well in India. So there's a lot of stuff going on. And we also have the English reformers, and they're looking to expose corruption. And they're also looking at the social justice issues and the exploitation that they believe is happening to the Indian people under the British rule in India. So there's a lot going on in terms of the politics. And I absolutely love this story. The sweet romance and how it played out. It was just really fun. And we had all those fun Regency story elements as well. And Kitty and her love for astronomy, it was lovely to see how she was able to, the whole astronomy thing in terms of the stars and science and what was going on at that time. It was really interesting to read that on the page and to also understand why the constellations and the astronomy was so important to her. And Sebastian, he was just really torn between family duty and pleasing his grandfather, and also seeking the truth and doing what's right and having honesty and integrity. And there was a whole lot of stuff he was dealing with in the story. And their families were just so complicated for different reasons. And we have social justice themes that are explored, not just in India, but also in England. And we have real life historical figures. There's a number of them, but I'll just name two. One is William Wilberforce, who was a British politician, and he was one of the politicians that worked very hard to abolish the slave trade within the British Empire. And we also have William Carey in India, and he was one of the first missionaries to India and was looking at translating the scriptures. So there were some really interesting historical figures in the story as well. So I'm going to share my favorite book quote, which is this one. His plan, though often hidden, had been weaving a tapestry of grace and purpose in my life. And one of our main characters is thinking this. And really, both of them at different times were looking at God's will and not necessarily feeling like God was in control with some of the stuff that was going on in the story. And this particular character is really needing to remember that God loves them, even when it doesn't feel like it, and even when you can't see God's plan, He's still there and He's steadfast in His love. So I describe this story as having strong and relevant faith elements. The characters really are seeking God and drawing on their faith when there are times of crisis, and there are a lot of times of crisis in this story. There was a lot going on, and they also question circumstances in terms of God's plan for their lives. And I think having two controlling grandfathers that were really taking some major life decisions like who you marry out of their hands made it really hard for them to see God's will, because the reasons that they were forced into this marriage were selfish reasons for their grandfathers rather than what was necessarily in their best interests. And so the characters were dealing with trust issues and abandonment issues, looking at the importance of seeking truth and not turning a blind eye to evil. And exposing evil despite the personal cost was another theme that was explored in the story. And we also have redemption and forgiveness themes as well. So in terms of the impact on me, there were lots of smiles because it was a fun Regency romance with the balls and the season and all the things that I love with Regencies. And at the same time, there were some very poignant moments, and we had grief and loss as well in the story, and some pretty hard issues that the characters are dealing with. And it also made me think in terms of the historical context and what was going on with Britain and India and women's rights, and really the lack of power that Kitty had. And she had a grandfather who really didn't care for her needs and her wants, and she was really in a difficult situation and really didn't have many options other than to marry Sebastian, and that was really hard for her. And also the different cultures, looking at the Indian culture as well as the English culture and how they blended or didn't blend, and the contradictions and all of the complexities that go with the different cultures was just really interesting to read. So, in summary, I would recommend The Light of Stars to readers who like fun Regency romances, where you've got the London season and everything that goes with that, to readers who like the arranged marriage trope and family drama, and to readers who like complex mysteries with political intrigue and danger, and to readers who like the historical setting of India in the early 1800s under the British rule, and to readers who like strong and relevant faith elements in their stories that are very organic to the story and include redemption and forgiveness themes. Thanks for joining me today. Does The Light of Stars sound like a book that you'd like to read? Have you read it? What did you think? You can let me know. If you're listening at the podcast, you can send me a text via a link in the show notes. If you're watching at YouTube, you can like the episode or leave a comment at YouTube. You can also email me at my website where I have a contact form, and you'll find that at narelleatkins.com. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, and you can do that at your favorite podcasting app, or you can subscribe at YouTube, and then you'll get a notification on when my next episode drops. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please share the link with a friend, especially a friend who enjoys reading Regency romances, particularly if there's a if they have a historical interest in what was happening in India in the early 1800s, and also a reader who you think will enjoy reading Jenelle's books. And I have the giveaway. So we've got one paperback copy for a reader with a USA mailing address. Now, the giveaway will close on the 29th of July, which is USA West Coast time, and the link to enter will be in the show notes. So thanks for tuning in, and see you next time.